Titus, chapter 2. The aged women likewise, 2:2, by the way. The aged women likewise, that they be in behavior as becometh holiness, not false accusers, not given to much wine, teachers of good things, that they may teach the young women to be sober, to love their husbands, to love their children, to be discreet, chaste, keepers at home, good, obedient to their own husbands, that the word of God be not blasphemed. Bible smack! Alright. I know I'm not making it as much anymore. I'm kind of going internal. Alright. I'm just here to raise the roof and the cowlick. But I'm in one of those days where it is freezing cold and our furnace is broken, so it's just cold. And, so I just don't really want to freeze in the shower and then freeze some more. So, nevertheless, I'm going to cover a topic today that's been of interest for me for the last week or two. And really, the focus is, we're in the middle of a Marxist takeover of our society. And I've been focused on, the critical race theory issues, the racial issues, school board education. But I wanted to go ahead while we're kind of in an off season, because it seems like with Marxism, you get the categories and they just kind of rotate around. So it's wheel of Marxist categories. Okay. Alright, that was a Wheel of Fortune joke. I don't think it was that good. But anyhow. So I've been on the YouTube, and looked at a few videos. One was a Feminist Theology from Feminist Theologians, and did that for a couple hours, and then I forgot his name. But there is a fellow on YouTube. He's an ex-homosexual, now he's an evangelical Christian, and he had a feminist on his show who actually, she was a former lesbian professor, former professor of lesbianism. That's a ways. Anyway, gay studies, whatever. And she had converted to Christ, and now she's a pastor's wife, Presbyterian, and then studied a couple other things, and for reasons that will become more obvious, did a little studying on Freud and some other things. We have really gotten our society derailed on this issue particularly, and a lot of people have not known how to deal with it. And essentially, I want to kind of get my mind on this issue of feminism. Now, when I look at these studies, one of my old best friends said this about 20 years ago with me. He said, Matt, you're not the smartest guy I've ever met, but you're the most intellectual. And what he meant is that I might not devour one subject to absolute perfection, but I can connect different subjects of study and put the big puzzle together. And so I can't guarantee that I'll hit that perfection on these domains, but I want us to understand this religion of humanism. And of course, some would say Marxism is different from humanism, but this is kind of part of the equation. You see, these really are an off-breed of the Gnostics. The Gnostics had a secret religion. So the atheists go out there and they say, hey, we're not a religion. And then they give you all the components for a religion, in which you're getting up to these higher levels of academia and giving them a fortune. Then, now you've got the religion. So, here we are, and, I'm looking at feminist theology first. One thing this lady who was running it kind of talked about was that the basis of feminist theology is experience, which in my right-wing world is kind of Looney Tunes. Almost like my calic is just bugging me. I wish, okay, it's getting better. Getting better. Sometimes you just deal with this stuff. But anyhow, yeah, how they know things is based on raw experience. And experience, unfortunately, is subjective. You know what you feel how you feel, but how does that show you the big picture? And they may be fine with that. Maybe they just say, okay, well, I've got a limited picture. But ultimately, when they look at the Bible, they reinterpret the Bible according to a feminist philosophy that was based on experience. That is what she's telling you. But as I look at it, they're reinterpreting the Bible to a feminist philosophy. It's a little bit deeper than just an experience. Because these would all become part of what we call a left-wing paradigm. Now, I did a little bit, watched a couple videos of Betty Friedan. And Betty Friedan is the kind of face of feminism. I'm not going to make any comments, but basically, Betty Friedan is the face of feminism, and I saw some of her early stuff dealing with the topic, and basically giving you this testimonial of what she's like. Then I moved on to The Fountain of Age. This was a later work of hers. I don't know yet if she has passed on, but essentially, she was kind of now looking at the paradigm for people of age. Whereas, people have a fixation on youth, and then older age becomes discriminated against. And so she's really kind of taking her philosophy and shifting it from the cause of feminism, which was a battle they kind of won, and then moving on to what about old people with the Fountain of Age. I don't think this is caught on yet. But what I see in these is a philosophy that we'll call existentialism. Existentialism is where you have created your own identity. That your free will can make up who and what you are. And essentially, when she saw her role that was being given to her by nature and other people applying that, she said, no, this is not all of who I am or what I want to be or what I want to do with my life. And so she then goes into the feminism. And this is also going to be interesting when we kind of look this back up, but as we start to look at these influences of feminism, I found atheism, existentialism, and Freudianism. Now, Sigmund Freud himself was not what we would call a feminist, but he did give the roots from which feminism sprang. And what I mean is that he took his evolutionary worldview and then looked at the person through the eyes of evolution. What did he find? Well, Freud, in his atheistic evolutionary understanding of the world, believed that the force of life is in sex, and that the human is divided up into three parts: the id, the ego, and the super ego. Now, the id is the basic fleshly function. Okay, and so our baser instincts, hormones, and feelings are within the id. And within the id, he would find the libido, okay? The libido, the libido, okay? And then he would find the ego, which is the rationality factor. And then he would find the virtues and morality in the superego. So the superego is really where we would attach the ideas of spirituality. Now, many years ago, I did read a piece talking about a Christian counselor who preceded Freud, and he was of a what we call a trichotomous understanding, which is also what I hold to, so that Freud was borrowing from him. But since that was many years that I read that, I'll focus on what I've been looking at lately. And essentially, the idea of life would be something that we would attach as theists. We would attach that to the spirit, which is what he calls the superego. And I have come to an understanding in recent years, especially in Corinthians, where it says that sexual sin is man's sin against himself. And I think that's talking about, your sexual virtue depends on how you're going to raise your family. And therefore, it's like you, as in your family and your lineage. But that being said, the spirit is a force of life, and sexuality is a manifestation in the flesh of the spirit. So, there is these things about sexuality that, we have deeper feelings, okay? And, you have, a man's raw sexual lust, and then you back up a little bit more, and then we deal with the concept before we get to sex, we deal with romance, okay? And the romance, it brings us more to a spiritual flavor. And so I do believe that sexuality basically is, the spirit manifesting into the flesh. So when we look at these, the freudianism is going to start interpreting things in all sorts of different categories, and it's trying to get rid of any spiritual category. When you look to the spirit, as a Christian, I look externally to God. But if I were an atheist existentialist, then I would have to look inwardly within myself. And for the humanist, the truth, the spirituality has to come from inside instead of outside. So then when you see someone into this type of meditative state, they would focus on themselves and they'd say, well, this is what my feelings are telling me. This is what it's like for me because I'm a man or a woman. This is what it's like for me because I have black skin or white skin. This is what it's like for me because I speak this language. All these different factors within themselves are basically revelations of their own prophecy of their own mind, because they are the God of themselves. All spirituality and theology is then transformed into a psychology. And that's very important. This is the alternative religion within the secular humanism. When we talk about God, what is the role of God? Now, a humanist could be an atheist, or could be a deist, or some form of agnostic. Because for them, that's not what's important. Either God has nothing to do with us, or there is no God to do anything with us, essentially. So all these deeper truths have to be found encased in your own corpse, your own body. And so this is kind of how they're looking at the world. This is how they're measuring truth. The Bible is not the Word of God. It's the Word of man. And I can search the Bible as a man and find in the psychology that surrounds all these great stories some sort of meaning, but I am the judge of what that meaning is and how important it is. That is an axiom that we have to understand. So, when we look at this, feminist theology is vomit, okay? It is taking religion in and then puking it back out. Because they've already found the God of their brain. And now they take it in, furls in the stomach, and then you have black theology, feminist theology, liberation theology. However, when we switch over to the concept of Marxism, Marxism is not internal, it's external. And they would say, hey, let's stop all the navel gazing. Instead of focusing on theology in an inward way, or religion in an inward way, we take all these ideas and principles, and then we focus on what we can do with them. And what we can do with them is puke. So, the Marxist wants to change and alter the structures of society. And basically become God to the rest of the world. And so they process it and reprocess it under their narrative of the victim and the oppressor. Now, as a feminist, you would interpret the world as being misogynistic. The enemy is the patriarchy. Anything male is the enemy. Now, by the way, a male can be a feminist. He can go along with this idea. And he can fight for the idea. But there are things that inherently go against nature. And the issue is that when we talk about male and female and then apply it to religion, well, the first person was Adam, a male. And then God took his rib, and ribs are capable of reproduction, by the way. You could regenerate a limb. But basically, the man was the first, and the woman was a derivative of the man. And so man is the ultimate origin. Now, Freud, he was a misogynist, and he said, look, the women are lesser men. And so they're envious of the men because the men have the, bigger reproductive organ, okay? But basically they would say that. They'd say, okay, the woman is, jealous of the man and his power. And then the feminist movement comes out, and what do? They start emulating men. So this really is coming from Freud, And so they'd say, oh yeah, you're envious of this or that. And for feminism, that's true. That the woman's traditional role, being the mother and the caretaker of the home, is obviously inferior. So basically, in order for you, if you are a feminist, in order for you to be a feminist, then you have to assume that a traditional mother, that the natural role is therefore an offense. and that you want to be a man. And so now we do have, and this is something interesting to me, okay, because I'm seeing a feminist society that's taking over. And when I look at that feminist society, the man is the worst thing you can be, but why are these women then imitating men? They'll start trying to grow facial hair. They'll start, wearing masculine clothes and trying to talk a little bit more butch. And I'm thinking, how is this giving you an advantage in society? What are you doing? But it's going along with these paradigms that have been set forth. Well, and you can find some similarity when we start getting into critical race theory. Because they divide up between the white and the black, regardless of what that means. Okay, because skin is just a melanin level. It's a level. All right, you got a lot, you got a little, you got somewhere in between. I look at this face out in the light of January, but I've got pictures when I was a lifeguard and, kind of living up with a darker complexion, okay? Not so pale of a skinned brother. But essentially, when you go into these categories, they just kind of like say, hey, I'm a victim, I'm the lesser, I'm the wimp, don't I get compensation? It's a very weak ideology. I mean, they can yell, they can project, they can flex their muscles a little bit, but at the end of the day, this is something of like, hey, gimme, because I'm wimpy, wimpy, wimpy. And so, also with sexuality, we'll see some influence from Alfred Kinsey. And obviously, as feminism and race theory, those things are not as perfectly solid as they would like to project themselves. So once there's a little bit of subjectivity there, then you have a lot more subjectivity, and you can bring in with the homosexual ideas. What we're seeing is that people are not to fit in cohesion. Starting with a species. Okay, we're not unified by our own species. And then we try to create that unity in some other way, shape, or form. And then that will have its own political force. So even though we don't actually unify, well, we can be unified for the cause. Okay, and that's the only thing worth unifying. Everything else has to be destroyed. Families have to be destroyed. Religions have to be destroyed. And nations have to be destroyed. Okay, because you're trying to reinstitute something else. And that something else has a spiritual force to it. But the patriarchy, when we destroy the patriarchy, what happens is that we destroy personhood. God, if you're a feminist, and really consistent the whole way through, cannot be male. So then what is God? Well, he doesn't become female. All right? God becomes personless. It's not male. It's not female. Or maybe you'll have multiple gods with a goddess or something, but really, you really got yourself stuck. Because now you don't have a personal God. Then you don't have personal people. We're all a bunch of robots. Made by a robot. These are weird conclusions, but ultimately, the feminist God kind of goes in that direction. Jesus, they say, is only accidentally male, say the feminist theologians of feminist theologian Christianity. And, now that we, get rid of the patriarchy, men are not the providers and the protectors of the home. Well, then who is? Maybe you might have a really butch lesbian, go for it. But typically, what I've seen in society is that women will gravitate in this world of feminism to be not really, either they'll put it into their business to supply everything for them, and so the business becomes their man, or the government through social services becomes their man, and then when they get lonely, they can have a guy. And they don't respect the guy for anything because all he is just, getting rid of a issue. Okay. And, then they'll, or they can go into full lesbianism. And sometimes that can be violent and destructive. For several different reasons. We're just not made in that way. When you have somebody of the same sex, then you don't really see them in that perfect boy-girl relationship. Okay. So, is one being the husband, is one being the bride, or is they being both? Your needs are not always going to be met perfectly that way. But there is this overarching structure, and that's what we have to worry about. Another thing is, when we talk about this, there is a wrong way to go about this. Because they are prepared, feminists are prepared to think of men as misogynist if they're traditional. They would say that misogyny is the same thing as traditional patriarchy. Patriarchy is not misogyny because misogyny is narcissistic. Okay. The misogynist would be, there's a movement on YouTube that's atheistic, and I'm trying to remember what it was called. I forgot it. But basically, I'll probably have to do something separate on it. But it's these atheistic men who are just like saying, okay, we've had it with women. We're not taking care of women. We're not marrying women. We don't want nothing to do with women anymore. Okay? And so they're basically male feminists, to be honest with you. They're just saying, look, what's in it for me? Magda, I don't know. But, they have this ideology and they're like, that's it. I don't want anything to do with you. Because women have been taking advantage of men in divorce legal system. They'll say, I don't like you no more. I divorce you. I get the kids. I get the money, and you have to pay me. And they're like, okay, well, I won't marry anybody to begin with. All right? How about that? So, it's basically an atheistic, selfish man. But if we wanted to, or, and you can look at this the other way, Playboy. Okay, Hugh Hefner. Now, he was a disciple, along with Margaret Sanger, they were both disciples of Alfred Kinsey. Okay? And so the man basically sees the woman for what they can produce, and then they go on and forget about it. That's what we're seeing. And, there is a mythologized view of Bill and Hillary Clinton. It could be very accurate, but, I want to be fair. There's been rumors of Hillary being a lesbian for many years, but never anything that I would really identify. And that might be an issue where it's hard to identify to begin with if they don't claim to be. But essentially, the idea is that the two are in a convenient political marriage. And so even though Bill is running off or whatever, and Hillary does her own thing, and they rarely even, are pictured together, I think they're friends. If this were true, I'd still think they were friends. But they would kind of do their thing, and then, of course, they raised Chelsea. But regardless of whether or not that's true, there's just this idea of these automatons. And they don't really go together. When you have God, you have a design and you have a purpose. And all of a sudden, these things make sense together. But now it's gone through and the purpose is ripped off. So your whole view, psychologically speaking, is going to be something that is ripped apart. Women don't enjoy motherhood because that would ruin their fantasy. However, there's a lot of women out there, and I should have done some more study. I was going to study Phyllis Schlafly a little bit. She would be pro patriarchy. But essentially, your attitude is not the same as the overarching frame of society. That is a big issue. When I looked at this exchange between Beth Moore and John MacArthur, now I'm going to be honest, I think MacArthur won the fight. Why do I think MacArthur won the fight? Because when Beth Moore not only left the SBC, but joined an Episcopalian church, she had effectively given up, admitted that she was a liberal, admitted that she was a problem to SBC society. She tapped out. Okay? Why do I say this? Because if she was a conservative and she still was alienated from the SBC, but she felt that her position was biblical, she could have gone to a Pentecostal church. Pentecostals would have had no problem with a woman preacher. She could have gone to various Methodist and Wesleyan churches, and she could still claim to be biblically conservative and just hold that outside of the mainstream. She didn't do that. She could have, if she were simply liberal, stayed with or went with the SBC church. She could have also gone to the Cooperative Baptist Fellowship. Both of those groups would accept a woman. But instead, her entire theology framework, and remember, she's supposed to be a pastor, therefore she should be a theologian, therefore doctrine matters, okay? And she acted like she was conservative theologically. So if she was really in that framework, she could have gone to those other options. I wonder why she changed her doctrine. I don't get it. What was it that could sway her belief system? Now she's in a denomination where you don't have to be born again. That's it. That is the framework of the Anglican Church. And she's out there serving the Mass. Sacramentalism, mysticism, the whole 9 yards. All that changed the Bible because she didn't like people not thinking she could be a preacher? No, so yeah, she definitely lost that battle. Because MacArthur, basically, what is it? It's kind of like if there's snakes in the gutter and you want to get the snakes to kind of run out of the gutter. Okay, he fished them all out. Okay. He basically ran her out of the SBC. He wasn't even in the SBC. Okay. There were options. But yeah, he didn't know. Now and so good for him that he did, win that struggle. The problem is, I don't think that his methods were really effective to actually deal with a believing Christian woman struggling with the issues of feminism and patriarchy. Okay? Now, we could say, hey, biblical authority. And I think that's what I usually get is guys will say, well, there's biblical authority and that's it. Okay? But ultimately, that just spackles the issue. And a lot of times, you can hang on just, hey, biblical authority, and somebody's a soul winner, somebody is spirit filled, somebody is a Bible believer. When you get people who are really deep, then you can just leave it at that and say, okay, scriptural authority. But God is not the author of confusion. And it is a responsibility of a pastor to try to explain these things. Because when the pastor doesn't, then he makes God look bad. So the paradigm of patriarchy is not the same issue as if a man is a jerk. Okay? And if you want to laugh it off and ha ha ha, well, you know what? You're a jerk. Okay? People have to understand what's going on. When it comes to the issue of freedom, I believe that Jesus Christ sets us free. And women should be free and limited, maybe to a certain degree, or maybe in a certain way. But basically, they ought to feel empowered and free. And if they want to do a good thing, they should realize that God wants them to do a good thing. And it might not be in the way that they particularly like, because service in the kingdom is humbling. And so a woman being subservient to her husband is humbling. And they might not like to be humbled. But then a man has to serve his boss. He has to serve his constituency. He has to serve the people who buy his product. Okay? We all have to humble ourselves. That's life. Especially if you're a godly person. We cannot live just for ourselves. The paradigm is the issue. A man ought to be capable of being the provider and the protector of the home. And it is a terrible argument when we have men that do not want to provide and they do not want to protect their homes. Okay? That's the issue. You have to be responsible and take care of that. You don't have to be Brock Lesnar to be a man. You don't have to be Donald Trump. You don't have to be The Rock, okay, or other actors. You just have to be someone who follows God and does what they can do to provide and protect for the household. And if a woman finds that in a man, then she is no longer enslaved to the corporation or the government or whatnot. Okay? And when you can provide when you can provide them with an assurance and a confidence of that, then they can go far. Now, ladies, that man might not be able to provide everything, but that's why we rely on God. The government can't provide everything either. Your business can't provide everything either. We have to be dependent on God. And yet, when it comes to this issue here, if you are to submit to the feminist theology of these various sorts, eventually you conflict with Scripture, and then you destroy the authority of Scripture to those who care about you. Okay? And God can take care of you better than the devil. That's what has to be realized. Are there situations where people get stuck? Yeah. And to a degree, I'll be honest with you. If y'all marry, if you have a girl that marries a deadbeat husband, then I don't expect her to be of the same attitude than when the trophy husband comes home and he's got a big old house and all their needs are paid for. She's like, "Oh yeah, it's my baby," Well, that does automatically. There's going to be a higher exchange than you would get if you have, the guy who's upstairs still playing video games. Okay, so I understand that's just a fact of reality. Okay. But regardless of those things, you have to have a pattern. And the pattern has to fit the best for all people. There are exceptions. Okay? And people don't always fit into the box. But there has to be a box that basically sets the pattern for the majority. Now, the majority should not dominate the minority. Okay, so there should be freedom to be an exception to the rule. However, there still has to be an ideal. Society doesn't work without ideals. And so when we study feminism and we study all these other groups, what they end up doing is they make an ideal out of those human institutions, and then it's the worst for everybody. Just some food for thought. Catch you later.